His family meant everything to him.
It's halftime and I'm really focused on getting back in the game.
During the 1940s, an event that was occurring was World War II.
Do you hear that? Footsteps. My heart started beating fast.
Tears started to fill his eyes, making his vision blurry, but he was still able to see the purple flowers on his shoes.
My mom, Uncle Tito, and Uncle Fabio were inside their stuffy hot garage on a summer day of 1974.
We landed in the garden, and before we knew it, another explosion went off, launching us across the garden into the next yard.
We told everyone to bring beer. That night, 30 to 40 people filled the house.
I could feel the anxiety taking over my body slowly.
I was awakened by the sound of my brother screaming cries of terror.
The sun was beating down on everyone outdoors, and running for what seemed like hours didn't seem to help.
Sometimes I play a game in my head.
Why don't we mix in mashed up chili peppers into the water so that it can taste spicy?
I could hear two faint voices in the background, and I recognized them as my mother's and my doctor's.
They treated us like criminals.
Love conquers all. The only thing she knew was love.
The breeze felt warm and the day was still early, making the view from the cliffs foggy from the marine air.
The figure possessed a lot of energy.
The birth of a child is usually a joyous moment for expecting parents, but joy can quickly turn to heartache.
All he wanted was a drink of water.
Typically, when my grandmother was in the kitchen, she was up to something quite peculiar.
She saw the cutting board and a lot of bread.
She kept insisting to the nurse that it was almost time.
If I would have met her, I bet she'd have the same optimism I possess.
He yelled desperately at him, telling him his base had been bombed.
The wall seemed to be closing on him.
My mom's special whistle indicated that she was coming down the hall.
I haven't seen my dad in a little over 3 years, the longest I've gone without seeing him, so this is a special visit.
At the time, I lived in Tijuana. I was an undergraduate student majoring in chemistry.
I usually kept to myself, so I stayed reading on the bleachers. I felt like I fit in. He needed to go out. Now!
I'm just a kid, and I, like most kids, still know how to have a good time and crack jokes.
As I stared at her face like a madman, I noticed blood flowing down from her head, merging with the tears from her eyes.
I'm sitting here waiting for time to pass until the next time I see my great-grandma. That's when it all started. All the hospital stays, doctor's appointments, and out-of-town medical travel.
As we walked up the hill, I could feel the blood dripping down my forehead.
The big mess getting more nervous every time the stand owners shook their head no.
An older guy approached us asking to borrow a car.
The only two souls that seemed to be awake was my own and my mom's.
It was at that point the doctor asked my father to make an imaginable choice. Deep down, I knew that this wasn't your typical teenage blues I was experiencing.
Jimmy's arm was dripping with bright red blood. I watched him cower into a fetal position. He was sobbing on the ground.
How ironic that the first person that I ever hated was my mother.
Dad should be here, eating, playing, entertaining us. I miss him. The sensation was worse than the shots received.
We're almost there, Daddy.
From the bus, I took a community taxi, and I only needed to walk 2 blocks to get to my house.
Is it normal to feel so much and show so little?
What was the point of telling them how I felt if nothing was going to change?
I could feel anticipation and excitement running through my veins.
At approximately 1 p.m., we found out the truth.
It sounded easy enough, but it wasn't any old magazine.
Weeks passed and I still had not met my baby sister.
My dad was 4, and my uncle was 6.
I knew that some action had to be taken in order to gain the closure.
Click, click, click. I turned around and it was Johnny Jones and his crew.
Try your best to save Will. As he raised Toe, he felt excited, like he was on a mission.
Today is the first day of school, and let's hope I can get through it on a good note.
To remind me of it every day, I have 2 plates and 13 screws in my left arm.
I knew that I would never be the same, and I would never allow anyone else to treat me that way.
I would talk to him about simple things, though that kind of goes without saying, considering we were only 4 years old.
She grabbed Gustavo's arm and with a stern look said, "She's here!"
It was a normal day right outside Isaac's house, and we were trying to find things to do.
The wall seemed to be closing in on her.
Life is cruel, unfair, and the why is never answered.
Unfortunately, it meant I would inevitably lose contact with my 2 best friends.
It seemed as if they worked 10 times harder than they ever have before.
I didn't want to say anything because I felt like a child with that fear, being afraid of the darkest juvenile.
It was a hot summer afternoon, and all my cousins and I could think of was eating something cold.
With our teacher still out of sight, I grabbed the notebook from my desk and stuffed it into my pants.
They were starving.
San Diego Probation Department.
Like a hero coming to the rescue, my grandfather emerged from his room and stopped his son before any further damage could be done.
Disoriented, we ran into a random direction trying to dodge all the bullets, explosions, and flying debris coming our way.
All of a sudden, I felt pain on the left side of my face, and then I heard a thud.
He went to the shoe store after school with all his hard-earned money and bought a pair of black Converse with white laces.
Later that year, he moved to San Diego and got a job.
Some of them had their faces covered and had guns that I had only seen in movies. I believe it is important to be humble in life because life has a way of humbling you if you aren't.
And just like that, I became trapped.
While they were rehearsing, Uncle Fabio was annoying Uncle Tito, and for no reason. Why are you eating a dog treat? She looked at me with a puzzled expression and took out the remaining half.
My great-grandmother lost everything due to the bombings in Tokyo.
I called my best friend Emma and told her we were going to have a house party on Friday night.
3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. I marked the days down.
And the wedding proceeded with their hearts at ease.
My uncle was curious to see what it was and cried at the sight.
She was relaxing by the beach when she noticed a dark figure.
Reality set in, and in my mind I knew there was no turning back.
Sir? He asked. Confidence found its way into his words.
Hours passed and my mom was released at 7 p.m. that night. My dad remained captive for 10 days after a large ransom was paid.
The story about my grandfather is one of my favorites because it's a humorous and lighthearted one.
The doctor informed us the baby's umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck.
I only hope that today will be better. I don't want to fall short of my expectations.
It was a cold, rainy afternoon.
A second wave of planes came over, this time firing their weak guns.
It's a girl, they said, and my eyes lit up with joy.
After years of being an older sister, at that moment I knew nothing would keep us out of harm's way.
My notebook literally saved my bum, and the principal didn't even notice that she had been outsmarted by a 3rd grader.
I was accompanied by 2 friends who were playing cops to make sure I wouldn't escape.
We were at the park day in and day out.
Chopped.
The smile she had on her face was completely wiped off.
16 hours later, she went into surgery. I look around me and see everyone crying. When I look at my reflection, empty.
I believe it was the weekend.
The looks of disbelief from some of the girls became obvious to me. In their eyes, I was playing foolish.
In return, I realized that I'm more alone than I ever was before.
He had a baby girl who he completely adored and would eat tuna and watch cartoons with on the weekends.
It must be chicken, she thought.
We weren't stealing a car. My grandfather was just as frustrated as the others, but he wanted to change that.
After walking for 30 minutes through different trails, there it was, the hell home.
She then took the glasses off the top of her head, focused her vision, and said, "They taste pretty good."
I breathe in, and even the inhale and exhale of my breath bring me peace.
That was a great day.
My heart started to race and I could feel the goosebumps on my neck and arms.
My grandpa's name is Ignacio Mello.
I felt hopeless. I was all alone. I just sat there, wondering.
The events from our past can potentially mold us into the people who we are today.
But as tears filled my eyes, I gave up.
Suddenly, someone put their hands over my eyes and over my mouth.
Thinking I was going to enter the fashion world and be exposed to a glamorous first-hand experience in styling and PR was a long shot.
But as I tried to stand up, I felt so dizzy and I fell right back down.
Wait, pause. What just happened?
Every time I hear about this story, it just makes me think, wow, our generation has it made.
When my parents were gone, not knowing if they were okay was the worst feeling.
She kept insisting to the nurse that it was almost time.
Araceli screamed for help, but it seemed like no one heard her.
His brother was ready for the knife to pierce through.
He was completely unaware of his minuscule stature and insisted he could knock you out with one swipe of his mighty paw.
We went to the nearest house and hopped the fence.
My mom and dad had left on vacation for a week.
But I know she's looking down, smiling.
I remember him always being nice.
The thought of being in total absence of light made me feel unease.
Running from the cops is never a good thing. But at the heat of the moment, my friend Isaac and I did not know what to do.
The first song we performed in front of the parents was "I Wanna Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles.
Crack!
She was about to panic when she heard someone outside screaming for survivors.
It was dark out and dawn was just beginning.
Move over, let me hide with you guys.
Our 1 week vacation didn't even last a day.
The meal was served to my mother and she took a bite.
Ángel de la Guarda, mi dulce compañía, bless all those that I love.
She received the name Paulina, which had been decided beforehand. But in that moment, my parents also decided to name her Esperanza.
I would pull off the covers and find Dexter by my side. His ears would be folded over and like floppy almost.
I fell in love with skateboarding when I was 13.
My mother would ask him basic phrases so that she could communicate.
I took off my sandals, exposing my pale feet onto the little dry sand there was on the high cliffs.
Are they gonna be killed? Who are those men? Where are they taking them? Will they ever see them again?
My brother told me it wasn't safe to be out in the open, and that we should travel by people's backyards.
Without progress or history, there are no stories to tell.
My living room turned to a dance floor. We were dancing the night away and the backyard served as a makeout place.
My grandpa still remembers the older guys who used to work there.
I might have taken 3 or 4 3-pointers when my coach took me out of the game to give me a rest.
My Labrador barked ferociously.
But this time, without my parents' permission.
I guess she didn't notice the dog on the milk bone box or the cookie shaped as a bone.
My whole world revolves around that room, that stupid beeping noise, the sounds of little kids crying wanting to go home, and the sounds of doctors and nurses busy at work.
He fell to the ground holding his arm, trying to get free of the pain. I could feel my anger rising.
I became more resilient and stronger, and I never looked back.
Do you want us to save your wife or your son? They're both in danger. Only one can survive. Carmen and Gustavo would never have imagined to hear that.
She has less than 2 weeks left. I am not a quitter. I can't return empty-handed.
I wonder what would have happened if we had stayed. Started out as a trigger for a little fall, turned into an all-day affair.
At first, she profusely refused, but after seeing no other way, she agreed.
The only thing I could focus on is the dripping coming from the sink.
The sun was burning my arms and face.
Names are important to my family.
9 consecutive life terms plus 156 years. That's what my dad, David Medina, received in 2001. He was only 24 years old.
Uncle Tito played the drums, Uncle Fabio played the guitar, and my mom was a singer.
He introduced me to my life as I now know it.
It was one of those things that happened without fail, like the seasons changing or the sun coming up.
It seemed like an ocean of grass, filled with a walkway, palm trees, and even a trampoline.
My mind was overflowing with thoughts and emotions that it just snapped into.
Will anyone else ever love you as they used to?
January 20, 2006, 2:05 a.m. We got a call from an international number.
The coach set me back in the fourth quarter and I was in the zone for the rest of the game.
When my parents were gone, not knowing if they were okay was the worst feeling.
My uncle knew the consequences, but still continued.
Part of it could be attributed to the fact that I was always sheltered, though in reality it was because I was very absent-minded when I was young.
I now had hope, and for that, I am forever thankful.